Another football season launches on Thursday. We're recording this on Wednesday. We're sitting here. It has been a crazy ride through covering the New York stuff, covering the will it, won't it happen in Florida? Will it, won't it happen? What's going on in California? The weird for a second that there might be a glimmer of hope in Texas, some of these other big states, all of that. Adam, I'll just start with you on this. Where are we right now, just as an industry as a whole, as we head into football season, which we know is by far the highest customer acquisition point of the year for all of these sports books, and also where they get the most handle?
You know, Matt, it's an interesting point to reflect on what's happened in 3+ years in the U.S. sports betting industry. And I know reflection is not something we spend a lot of time doing because we're largely just trying to keep up with the giant machine that is churning out news and more sports betting fodder for us. But we are at a point where we're about to go into a season. The NFL has 7 sportsbook partners. The NFL is producing its own gambling content. We're talking about potentially $1 billion ad spend on television this year, advertising legal sports books across the country. And we have nearly half of U.S. states that have some form of a legal sports betting industry, with a few more set to launch. And that is not including real industries in the states you just mentioned, New York, California, Florida, and Texas. And we're sort of in a prime M&A phase here as well. So I just thought it was a good time to sort of think about how far this has come, even though it feels like we're churning this out day after day after day. 3.5 years in, this is already a multi-billion-dollar industry. We've already seen major shifts in where the power centers are. Obviously, Nevada still has its claim to fame, with Las Vegas being the OG of sports betting. But we've seen markets like New Jersey, like Illinois, like Pennsylvania stake their claim to say, hey, listen, you can have both a big market in Nevada, and you also can have these other power centers, to use the same word a second time. And that's not even to mention that we lost sports for the better part of 6 months in the middle of a global pandemic in the middle of all of this. So it's just remarkable to me to think about where we are as we launch another NFL season here today, as the leagues are farther in bed with this than they ever have been before. The possibilities still seem endless for where this could go over the next 5 to 10 years. And I for one have enjoyed the ride so far, and I'm looking forward to what comes next.
So, Dustin, let's take a look at, we know that New Jersey already surpassed Nevada whenever it came to handle, and we imagine that will continue to be the case here this season without New York being, fully launched and all the different things like that. So we know how much they get from just across the river over there, and then we also get some a pretty big state. I think people that don't live on the East Coast don't realize like the population of New Jersey. You just don't really think of New Jersey as being one of those states that actually has like a pretty decent population, but it definitely does. What other state out there do you think are we going to see some really big jumps as we head into football season here? Because again, we saw New Jersey take that leap and kind of crown itself as actually the state, the biggest state when it comes to sports betting. Are there some other states out there that are kind of going to really take a leap this year as we head into the fall?
I mean, I'll be interested to see what happens in Michigan and Virginia. These are 2 states that launched prior to the Super Bowl, which is obviously a big acquisition point. But, you have a full slate of operators in both these states, and heading into NFL season, which we know is just prime acquisition territory. This is putting most of their marketing dollars behind this push right now. And I think I don't know how much bigger it'll be, but I think it'll move the needle in terms of how much sites and apps will acquire customers right now without a full NFL season under the belt in those 2 states in particular. I mean, the other thing I'm really watching, I think Adam did a great job summarizing where we're at, but the other thing is really interesting to think about, like even just year to year where we were with operators and what it looks like. We're still sitting here with FanDuel and DraftKings 1 and 2, but even a year ago, certainly 2 years ago, like we were talking about a much different landscape of who the big players are. We're now looking at Barstool is a force, or is at least live, and most of these states, arguably number 4. MGM, even year over year, its will to compete and to dump money into the space far exceeds even just a year ago what it was doing. So that's interesting. You have Caesars just through the rebrand with Will Hill putting a lot of money into this. And then WynnBET, which was, I think we've called an also-ran in terms of that, is, they're spending serious money too. This will be really interesting to see what shakes out and who the players are, because we're going to start seeing that more quickly after the launch of NFL season. Because again, you're like, yeah, there's deals out there happening, acquiring customers, state launches, but this is when you acquire customers, and this is when you build what's going on into the next year and future years and all of that. So I'll be interested to see if somebody eats into DraftKings and FanDuel, gets into the 3 spot, how much erosion there is, and just if any of these smaller players or a Barstool at number 4, can they be a 3 or a 2? This is really interesting to see how the operator side of this shakes out and who's going to be leading after some NFL action here this fall.
Adam, we saw really big numbers come out, of the fall last year. And, we kind of summarized that, okay, hey, look, there's a lot of people who are working from home or are out of work, or there's nothing better to do because everything's shut down and there's nowhere to go and there's no places to go out to eat and all that. So why not sit at home and take advantage of being able to bet on sports on your couch? Because at least sports were happening and you could watch those on your television. Now that we've had at least a little bit more of a step back to normalcy a year later here, do you feel like these numbers will decline at all? Or are you like, you know what, actually, because there is a little bit of sense of normalcy here, maybe fandom increases even more. People will be going back to games. People will be maybe a little bit more engaged in all this. And there's only the only place these numbers can go is up.
In the short term, I think you're safe to say the only place to go is up. And I don't think it was just a pandemic effect, because what the pandemic effect ultimately did was take any brick and mortar operator who was hesitant about making the big move into online sports betting and show, hey, in order to be competitive moving forward, if you really want to play in this space, you have to do this. I mean, look at Caesars. You just mentioned Caesars and William Hill. I mean, the move that Caesars has made is seismic compared to where it was at this point 12 months ago. We talk about BetMGM. Even though BetMGM really did not have a lot of success in its first 12 months, you could see BetMGM positioning itself with the joint venture, with Roar Digital. It was moving that direction. But Caesars was sort of sitting it out. And then they pushed forward with the William Hill acquisition, and now you take that technology, you move forward. So I don't know that it's necessarily a situation where the numbers can only go up, but in the short term, I think you're going to find a couple of things. One, this marketing spend is going to turn into dollars wagered. It's not going to necessarily turn into profit quite yet, but it's going to turn into dollars wagered, and we're going to see more handle because people are less concerned about immediate income right now, right? We don't have the job loss that we did in the middle of the pandemic, and there's more discretionary spend that is available for people. And we know in some ways that gambling is a bit of a unicorn. It's somewhat recession resistant, that people will still spend on vice. But when it comes to sports betting, I think when we look at some of the new markets that have been added, when we look at some of the spend that's been made in the casino realm, Dustin mentioned Michigan as a state to watch. Yeah, Michigan's a state that legalized an entire suite of iGaming products. You have poker and you have iGaming to be able to cross-sell into and out of as well. So I think that, down the line, certainly we could see some evening out of these numbers, but I don't think it's going to be this year. I don't think it's going to be where we look at New Jersey and say, wow, why didn't they get to that $1 billion month? I think they're going to get to that $1 billion month pretty easily, while New York still jerks around with figuring out its situation.